Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a great honor to be here at APIX. I have a deep admiration for Sensedia because of the transformation that they can do. I've been here talking about software architecture, but we're going to talk about cooperative architecture and see how it relates itself when it starts with AI, where there are a number of new expressions to transform things. Definitely about AI, I noticed that we are at the breaking point or even bigger than we faced during the Industrial Revolution. What we have noticed is quite amazing. I dare to say that we're going into a phase where we are leaving what was known as the economy of knowledge and going into a phase where we're talking about perspective economy. Knowledge tends to be a commodity. This is quite an affirmation, but it's much more got to do with the application of knowledge in practice or the development of knowledge in a traditional manner. I'd like to talk to you. Let me advance here. Here is a brief description of myself. I've been working for over 30 years with technology, worked in many large companies, developed software, data banks, and one of the data banks most utilized in the world. And I've been making an effort to help people to develop software in the right manner and preferably thinking about people. This is an important aspect because suppose many of you have noticed that a long time ago, the way you collaborate with your organization is less thinking about developing software, but think how to develop people, which is the main restriction because people leave the company. So for those who want to know more, elemarjunior.com. As you can see here in the social network, you can find me there. It's going to be very good to continue this conversation afterwards. Well, another important aspect, I made this presentation so I can share it with you, no problem at all. Those who would like to obtain information, the QR code is on the screen, so you have the link so you can get this presentation, share it with you, and also the update that we'll receive throughout time. Now, advancing, do you acknowledge the importance of technology? I was talking to someone last night, a person that's very experienced in technology, and he told me about the difficulty of talking to people that were not in the area of technology about the importance of technology. An important question that arises is that, well, my company is it should we be a tech company? I hear this question being repeated so many times in such an insistent manner. Yes, we are a tech company. I cannot ignore the fact that every time you have to say that you are something, it's because in fact you're not. So, an important point here is that it doesn't make a big difference if your company is or not a tech company. The fact is that, and I'd also like to leave some food for thought, the fact is that there are no relevant activity that is done, executed in the companies you work in, be it technology, that are not supported directly or indirectly by technology. And that's it. So, as of this perspective, I cannot execute any relevant activity without using technology. When I notice this is the truth, I automatically think that technology can operate for me in two ways. Either technology is going to be an enabler, accelerating, simplifying the result, or, and this is the side that we usually mention, those that work with technology talk good things, say good things about technology. Technology is a great restriction or constraint for the organization, complicating and making things, the progress, unfeasible. I have followed companies of all sizes, mainly in large companies. I noticed that technology is being noticed much more as a restriction rather than an enabler. The deadline that we have, and Paulo talked about this, the deadline we have and the challenges that we have for delivering technology at the pace that is needed, it's not compatible with what is demanded by the business. So technology in many organizations has converted not as an enabler, but as a restriction. And this is an important aspect when you talk to an executive, when you talk about technology. An interesting phenomena happened. Mainly executives at a certain age, they say quite proudly that they know nothing about technology because they have someone that solves tech problems in the country and in the company. What happens to a human being when you deal with something you don't understand or you don't know? The natural way out is you either go away, run away, or we fight. So most part of the cases, since people do not understand technology, and because of that, they run away or they fight. This is what's happening with ChatGPT. Many people say that AI cannot do certain activities, but such activities mentioned are not activities that were not planned for ChatGPT. It's not an oracle. So if it brings up a wrong answer, that's not a problem. If you expect to find in ChatGPT or look at ChatGPT as an oracle, it's not a replacement for your data bank. It's not a replacement for a chess master. It's not going to play chess that good. So, but when you notice technology, it's either an enabler or a restriction. It is not possible in the current business scenario to think of anything, especially about strategy, without thinking about technology. So you cannot separate these things. And then my food for thoughts come in. Are we a tech company? Yes or no? It's not such a relevant point because you can talk about business without talking about technology in a responsible manner. Not anymore. So this is my first food for thought for you. Now, it's interesting to notice that the different moments technology went through in organization. If you go back to the year 2000, technology was seen as a cost. As such, you always will cut it. So in traditional companies, when it is noticed as a cost, it's subject to the finance sector and the CFO. So basically, this is the most common strategy. Now, the basic one to deal with technology is outsourcing. So this is what you actually direct to it as cutting costs. But it seems quite dangerous when it is an enabler for operations. The second movement, technology can be seen as an asset. When you have it as an asset, you start to list technologies, like you have a API portal, and then which will make integration with our suppliers, integrators, and partners possible. So becomes an asset. But in these companies where tech is purely seen as an asset, the great aspect is to do the separation or apportion. So the third movement, you can see technology as a partner. With pandemic, you saw many executives saying that tech is a partner for their business. Then there comes a problem, which is the value of the business. So sometimes we make a bit of a confusion with value to the user and value to the business, which is not the same thing necessarily. So another aspect is that you start having an in-source culture where you can bring the movement of technology from outside in. So you got to invest in capability. But the problem with partnership, it works until it goes wrong. So then we have a serious problem. Historically speaking, we have the business area specifying request and technology area as a partner, giving delivery and stipulating or determining deadlines. And then one starts blaming the other. So business people say that tech people do not know how to deal with the deadline. I'm a programmer and I write several codes for a long time. When they ask me for a deadline and I say I'm going to take me just a morning, it's going to take me the whole day, and so on. So if I say more than 3 days, it's much more. So raise your hand who has the courage to say that it's different with you. Let's see if anyone's here. So, you're in the middle, right? Well, very good. Now, another problem, business. A business person, tell them to write the following sentence. If you throw a stone at the window and it broke, so how to know what broke, the stone or the window? So irrespective of this, what happens. Now, Portuguese language is ambiguous for those who know how to write it, and people don't usually know how to write Portuguese language. What is the essential problem? The essential problem is that this premises, we have this premises of requirement. So things do not have requirements anymore. They have hypotheses. And as such, it has to be tested. So people from technology, they don't specify hypotheses. They are specifying requirements. So then there's a battle. They change idea, didn't work. And they then argue with us saying that we difficult their experimentation. They're right. But the whole problem is this duality. The saddest thing, if you go back to the Agile Manifesto, you've got to say that you've got to value customer collaboration and follow contracts. Well, to collaborate means two things, and collaborate and cooperate are two things. If I were to cooperate with Clever, I said I arrived here at APIX in my time, I delivered my speech in the right way, my presentation the right way. My part I did, and everything went out well, but there was no engagement. Well, maybe from APIX made an error of advertising and so on. It's your problem. If I say it in this way, I said I did everything on my behalf, but you did not fulfill your goal, so I only cooperated. If I understand that I did everything, nevertheless the goal was not reached, we failed, then I collaborated. So you can use Scrum, Kanban, safe, whatever. If you do not understand, you have to collaborate with the business, and the business got to collaborate with you. You're not cooperating. You're not cooperating. You're collaborating. You're not agile. You do what many Brazilians do. Actually, I am Brazilian. People worldwide do things. We give the wrong name to the right things. We put post-it on the wall. We call it Kanban. So we put certain goals. You're doing a sprint on a sprint. That is not one. We give a beautiful name for wrong things. But in fact, this is not agility, because agility is culture. So if I drink water, I'll get lost. I'm very nervous to be here. If somebody puts my picture on the Instagram, I will add you. And the last one is an enabler, where you can notice you have IT and business as being the same thing. And when you ask to define and do digital transformation, using a system is not
Digitalization, digital transformation, when a company can notice that the digital is the essence, core And then in this case, technology is an interest theme responding to the CEO specifically. No, development companies at the beginning of OO, successor candidate to COO was CFO and then migrated to COO. Now companies transforms digitally. The candidate to CEO is CTO or CIO. There's a misunderstanding regarding both jobs. Now, what the business does not have requirements, it has assumptions, hypotheses. So this will be true more and more. I work with computing and predictive technology for some time, and eventually GPT was not something new, but for many it was. Last year, many didn't know what's open AI, which is not open. Papers of AI is the most obscure things in the academic world. But when the CEO of OpenAI stated that OpenAI would become the irrelevant Google, I said, this guy is thing of people from startup. So the small guy poking the big one and making noise. So you can see Google losing 100 million valuation in one day due to an unfortunate presentation by Bart. 100 billion, okay, floating of a day. But the point is, we live truly. And I don't want to be in that expression. We simplify too much things. Sometimes I think of coaching, so hugging trees, muka, and how it's presented, thinking that in fact tech trends are cropping more and more frequently, and we must test hypotheses more and more. Speed, velocity becomes an interesting attribute. Following this line, uncertainty comes as a major and privacy for lack of forecastability. Those who develop software for some time experience some journeys. First, we had virtualization, then within context, now we talk of tech as a function, then retrocess. Does not seem the path. Then you talk about the AI, mobile apps, though it's very difficult to prescribe not the strategic but tactic of technology because so many things are cropping up. So, very ambiguous information. So, if you assume incorrectly that are the magic solutions for software, not long ago, everybody said microservices were a key formula to do anything. There were no software architecture without microservices, which is stupidity. Everybody seems have to develop architecture based on microservice, otherwise would be wrong. But the whole point is when you start you looking at it this way, where this impugation is coming from, due to tenacious tech syndrome. This is a nice way of seeing this. So, tenacious sex syndrome is the syndrome of sex amongst teenagers. So, this is all teenagers say they have done it and talk about it as an expert, and few did it. And those who did it badly. Likewise with microservices. Everybody talk as an expert, but they don't have time to transform an organization to microservice and having people on stage talking as masters. There's no time enough. Is to bottleneck a legacy of years if you go to microservices. And worse, I adopted microservice, but we are using the same database. So it's not the only thing different. So, okay. Teenagers sex syndrome. To technology be enabled, the collaboration is fundamental. Be careful with the cost of opportunity. We from technology must talk more to collaborate more with the business. A secret. I always worked on tech company from staff engineer and more as CTO. I was always amazed that in the boardroom people knew nothing about technology, and it made me mad. I almost had problems with this. Then I said, no, okay, they don't understand technology. Let's agree. I will cross half the bridge and you do cross your half. I will learn a bit of business, you technology, and then we reach in the middle and talk. Do you know what happened? I stayed in the middle of the bridge alone. They did not come and join me. So I understood because as the minority, I had to cross the bridge and I started to learn how they spoke. They always talk about cost of opportunity, i.e., what you're not doing to do what you're doing now. And this perhaps is one of the biggest variables, according to our system, because cost of opportunity will talk about the importance of knowing how to give priority. And for this, you must know what's important for your business and what you're not doing. So if we don't learn to determine what's the cost of opportunities, learn to collaborate, we will face problems. Why technology? It's enabler. Where it's enabler, where is it the restriction for business? Where in your organization it enables and where does it restrict? And then why this is important. If you get a simple tool like SWOT analysis, all of them can be reread under the eyes of technology. And its role in the company is to help business people to reread the weak and strong points and threats. So, under the eye of technology, to do this correctly, you must answer this point. Where does the company gain the game? I pose this question for those from tech and not. Where does your company gain the game? Where is your company is the leader in this segment? Where is the bet? How to win? How to make a difference? So, in theory, this simple question helps us to solve simple humanity dilemmas. Right. Very simple. If all activities relevant are supported by technology, all activities where you gain the game, it is supported by technology. If you buy out of the box software for these activities, you're condemning these activities for the basic levels of market. Technology, where you gain the game, emphatically should be done at home. At least those companies with size for this technology that might just that only keep lights on. You do things just for doing it with no option. These you would have best cost of opportunity doing it at home, not buying. That's simple. But it's not that simple, in fact, because when you ask 10 individual business area where the company gained the game, you will have 10 different answers. The finance guy saying no one pays taxes better than him. Logistic is distribution of this company is a secret. Product guy saying that the product was what makes the difference. The fact is, when Spotify says purpose alignment, that confers everything, is that what they're talking? What's the activity you execute at home and you gain the game? If you cannot reach a consensus of this, hardly you will define a tech strategy convincing because you will end by doing what many corporations do. Tech people catering for those who scream higher. The squeaky wheel gets more. So the company, do you remember, bureaucratic, so forth, and pathologic? Well, in practice, big companies either are bureaucratic or pathologic. It's not the best project wins, but that project with more supporters. But that's cruel and unfair. Sad news I will give you. Yes, the world is not fair. Additionally, I don't see necessarily advantage of being generative, bureaucratic, or pathologic. It's the way of function and how you fit within. Learning to play the game according to the rules. People from tech have to complain less, and talking about how to make things work and function. Moving forward, we are better or worse of our competitors in technologies that help us to gain the game. If technology eventually you use to back up your activities and you gain the game is worse than the competition, you have a potential competitive disadvantage. Now, where to check the best in this case? The best today is that technology is easier to adapt and move forward. How long do you need to truly help the business to have a new experiment? If we are worst, what are we going to do to improve? If not, how our performance in these areas. It's a simple analysis you do with the business and you start having a company that's an enabler technology-wise for partner costs, assets. You have a company that will transform digitally wise. Inside, what delays the business? I just have 9 minutes. What delays the business? Complexity. The enemy is complexity. We normally use complexity and difficulties as interchangeable. They are not. Difficulty is the effort to do. Complexity, on the other hand, talks about something different. Complexity is the amount elements in a solution and interdependency amongst them. The more elements of solution and more interdependent they are, more complex is the solution. Complexity, it's difficult. It's not a rule, but important point here. Basic tip of architecture. You have components A and B. A depends on B. A coupling referring on one. B coupling afferent of one. One depends on it. Now, for component, anything, class, software, function, microservice, teams, individuals. And this context, K, left, a coupling different of 3, left, right, afferent of 3. Where it is more difficult, risky to change K, left or right? You're very enthusiastic. Where it is more difficult to alter T, key, left or right? Depend. Let's see. When coupling afferent is higher, K out be altered poses more risk to the business because you might break more. So when coupling afferent is higher, you have more risk of breaking all. When efferent is higher, you will be broken by all. Well, all architecture standards are based on this simple logic. I want to minimize coupling or manage it. So coupling is what happens where unit tests will value more value. I don't say one side does not have value, but where it's more. Right-hand side, no doubt, where K, afferent coupling, is higher. Know that where is more difficult to carry out a test? There. And what we do. So we want to increase coverage and it's no use. So, Guy, I have a monolito. Monolito database. I have a database for one sector of use. Coupling Afferator database 1. So I have microservices and I have a monolith. So I will increase my database. What did I do? Explosion of the afferent database. So it's a nightmare, the database. Why do I have to separate from microservice the database? Because the monolith is distributed. Congratulations, you're uniting the worst of both worlds. So, emphatically, we must think about coupling. Obsession by generating interface, because ATIs are not interesting today, because ATI does fantastic of transferring the coupling backend monolith. So it's afferent coupling. So it has this case 22. So what happened? Who didn't have problems with the test? Why is that complicated with the The efferent coupling is too high. Why do the BFF for front end? Why testing front end is horrible? It is, and it has efferent exploded coupling. You transfer its coupling for a PFF in the middle where testing is easier. It's always about coupling, always about it. So to planning coupling in a responsible way is the basis for you to create a solution that's more interesting. Practically speaking, I have to think, how can I create solutions that are in fact less coupled? Because the coupling will pose difficulties, complexities, and this complexity is what makes things slower. Because coupling the afferent, you have a risk of breaking the whole system. So I have to split my coupling. I have indicators. You notice solutions of complexity, which are huge. Use microservices solutions. People judge they're doing a huge thing here. But no, if it's badly modeled, certainly not. But there's one more point. Where's graph? Grouping coefficient, you learn it. It brings to us, you notice, almost all services and systems, you notice the standard and some clusters. So what do you have in clusters here, and what's the problem? First, what does it make this cluster? On your APIs and microservices. Can I tell you a secret? These clusters are the teams. There's a huge trend that teams use more their microservices than those from outside the team. Basic rule, all teams have many microservices, so it keeps forth. But you set up islands of coupling, sometimes creating structures that are not responsible. But the whole point is the digital world cannot avoid the law of Conway that will bring us the biggest strategy difference, which will bring the mapping to the organization. So the Corney law says organization developing systems of software trend to produce systems that are copy of the communication structures of these companies, i.e., the structure of your architecture will replicate the structure of your teams, and how they are organized will determine the architecture of the software. So polemic sentence was monolith systems does not develop those with microservices. Team with 10 individuals with microservices, a huge stupid thing you're doing. It will be build a distributed monolith. Monolith teams do not develop microservices. For this, you have to create a system of structure and teams distributed. And you must think before the software architecture, you must think about the organization structure. The select cone is true, we know, and the management guides the structure of the organization. So the management project software architecture. Now it makes sense, right? So the whole point is that we must think and build structures of engineering, software engineer, and engineering comes to our word that saying from Google that you software is the variable of time. When you select time, you add this of engineering. Everything related with the software function throughout time, it's engineering activity. That's why to build, plan, structure, build, because it's engineering to forms to all. Now, it's not only this, it's resisting to time with changes in scale, supporting it, and not only it, but doing it all with efficiency. So a good software engineer helps the company to support, back up the software throughout time, scale, without losing efficiency. How to do this? First thing, thinking of how the way you organize your teams. So the way you organize them will be the way you're going to be able to organize your architecture.
Here we see an interesting book called 10 Topologies, where you separate the team in four. category, streamlined team that take care of the demand of the business. These guys are connected to domain services. How can you map the structure of the teams? You can do this using the memory design. Each subdomain is equivalent to one or more teams. In fact, every team responds to the limited context, which is something so fluid because of a microservice. It's where things complicate. But you also have the platform teams. Platform teams will deal with experience, safety. They will deal with a number of things that are not concerns associated to the business, okay? And what happens is that I have platform teams that are thinking of how you're going to organize the system in terms of supporting functions that are not part of the business. What are the errors that most companies do? They maintain this technology concern with business concern. The guy that is pressed in time for deadline, he will not be careful with safety. He will not be careful with observability. He will not be taking care of such a thing if it's not prepared for him. And another aspect is that you have to have enabler teams. And there where architecture teams come in and the multi-signals and so on. So they are transversal. But be as a collegiate because you have architecture team, UX team, CRE team. These teams exist as transversal teams because you want to use them as the pathway of unification. And why do you need enabling teams? Because the guy that is pressed to deliver feature does not have any time to study the novelties of the architecture and technology trends and to maintain the companies up to date. So if you don't have people dedicated to this, you have an issue with legacy. What is a legacy? A legacy, what happens? Let me explain. We have a trade-off here between cost of maintenance and cost to develop. Every time you reduce development costs, you increase the cost to maintain and vice versa. So every time the business asks you to deliver something at an accelerated deadline, you get something such as a technical debt, which is something that the developer gets, increasing maintenance cost, but it's pure suffering. So if you don't pay technical debt, it comes with interest. So if it doesn't have interest, it's just the preference of the dev. So when you have a system where the team has more difficulty in paying the technical debt to get a new debt, you have a legacy. So we have this here. What happens then? You have technical debt. I am quite boring, but now I'm going fast because I didn't have enough time. I talked about this already. And in the same way, for management, the same rule applies. And here I mentioned the beginning, information, commodity activities, and nevertheless, here you have the set of slides in the beginning of the presentation. I showed it to you, now show it to you again. You see this guy, you go into this page, you can request this presentation, you're going to have the updates of it. So find me in the social network. I really will have great pleasure in ignoring you guys, okay? So we can do more. I have a number of things to do. I have a company, consulting, I have training, and so on. And also, I invite people to study with me and serve you very well. Okay, guys? So I have at Elemar JR. So this is my Gmail, Eximia, at Elemar JR, and so on. So I'm going to leave the stage very fast before they send me away. Okay, that's it. Very, very good. It's quite nervy to be up here, I can tell you. So we have questions, but I'm going to ask you just one. It'll take me 12 minutes to answer. Well, the stage is yours. Today, there is a tool that measures a coupling to generate a KPI generator. For example, here, there are extensions where you can seek the generation of afferent or efferent. We have Java, and we also have independent that does this direct metric. My friend, the architect, if you don't measure a coupling, start measuring it, because fast response. Oh, we can ask a last question then. You covered Elemar, but it's important to summarize what are the main challenges that company face when they seek or implement the decoupled structure. I think the great problem is to talk about what are the activities that the companies need to win the game. The lack of clarity that we see is that the tech team, they really get lost in the cost of the higher opportunity. So I don't do what I should do to do something else, and then you're going to have many people avoiding the company. So there is an interesting sentence that I like to say, that alignment of purposes confers alignment. So I might be even wrong, but you cannot have good people with autonomy to work if people do not work with the same purpose, because otherwise each person will be pulling for their own side. Okay, great, Elemar. Thank you very much.